Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to thank all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. It's been an honor to share with you information, news, analysis about what's going on in Mexico, both in English and in Spanish. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you who are joining us via our live stream on YouTube, and especially for today's to see and listen to today's guest. As you know, one of the issues that we've been addressing here in Living in Mexico throughout the years has to do with violence and the amount of suffering that has been happening in Mexico, mainly in part due to these groups of organized crime, but also there is a phenomena that has been very difficult to justify or describe, at least for me, which has to do with the number of people that have disappeared in Mexico. The most recent data that is official data being published by the government, by their official database, is that, listen to this, since the late 60s, more than 115,000 Mexicans have disappeared. And most of these disappearances, or at least a high percentages of these disappearances that have been reported, have been in the last 3 or 4 years during this government that had made a promise that they would not only help the families of those persons or those victims of disappearances, but also would take extraordinary efforts to stop the disappearances in this country. So as we've been describing this problem throughout the years, it continues to shock me that this isn't the main. As we talk about Mexico, we should automatically be talking about 115,000 Mexicans who've disappeared. Anyway, there's been different efforts that have been promoted by different NGOs, civil society, to try to at least, if not solve the problem of disappearances or trying to stop it. There has been various groups trying to help the families of those people who've disappeared. And today's guest is a representative of one of these efforts, Alma Rangel. She's the executive director of a NGO called Codeando MX, which is an NGO that is dedicated to using technology to solve social issues or social problems. And very recently, in the last weeks, they presented an extraordinary effort to use, believe it or not, WhatsApp as a tool where you can report a family member, a friend, or someone that you can't find that disappeared. And they walk you through a series of steps that you need to take when this happens. Alma, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're joining us. Congratulations on this effort. And just, could you describe to us just put into context why your group decided to create it's a bot, basically, that provides instantaneous answers for families in a desperate situation. Welcome to the show, Alma.
Thank you, Ana Maria, and thank you for the space. This project, it's called Socorro, which means help in Spanish, but it's also a common name in Mexico. And it was a collaborative project. It was developed by us as an NGO, but also by 2 other NGOs that are Quinto Elemento Lab, which is an investigative journalism lab, and Técnicas Rudas, which is a digital security organization, because the 3 organizations have been working with families of victims of disappearance in Mexico, as you said. And we noticed a pattern, right? So it's not just that people disappear in Mexico, it's also that those that are looking for them have not an easy way to access the justice system. So there are not specified rules or a guide that tells you exactly what you need to do when someone disappears. So when it happens, we are all at a loss. We don't know where we have to go, which are the procedures we have to do, who can help us have those procedures done, what are our rights. So this is a particular effort to help families and anyone who's looking someone that disappeared in Mexico, because this is very important. There are a lot of, for example, immigrants that disappear in Mexico. This tool works for any case in which the person disappeared in Mexican territory. So it's basically, yeah.
So I know you have a video that we can broadcast so people can kind of see an example of how this works. And the most important thing, and of course we will provide the phone number so everybody can have access to it. But the important thing is anybody can have access to it as long as that they have a WhatsApp account. So I mean, just here we can see in this video what this looks like. It's called Socorro Bot. And basically, if the moment you know or you believe someone you care for has disappeared, you would basically start conversing with this WhatsApp account. So kind of walk us through what we are watching and seeing at this point.
Yes, so you basically save this number as any other contact in your phone, and you can start a WhatsApp conversation with the chatbot. One very important thing is that you have to start the conversation so that we have consent to actually send you messages. So you can start it with any word. We normally use Socorro. And it starts explaining what the chatbot can do. One very important thing for us is that you are very clear about the reach that this tool can have. This isn't a formal report or a formal investigation. It's just a set of steps that you need to follow. One of the main things it asks is where the person disappeared in Mexico and where you're physically at. So we can give you some directions as to where you have to go, the offices that can provide assistance, because in Mexico, we have a federal republic and a lot of the crimes are investigated at a state level. So you need to go to the state where the person disappeared, for example. It also asks questions around if there was any authority participating in the crime, because from the broad cases of disappearing people in Mexico that we also have some cases in which the authorities themselves participate, which is enforced disappearance, and they have different procedures you can take. For example, there are certain measures you can take with different judges across the country to help you give a notification to the authorities and compel them to make the person that they took away basically appear, right? So we tell you information such as where is the judge, where you can find them, what's their physical address, what's their number, what's their email, so that it's easier for you to find. Because the first hours, when someone disappears, the first hours are critical to finding them alive. So we want people to lose the less amount of time possible. All of this information was actually gotten through public information, through interviews, and through the experiences that different collectives have already had with the authorities in Mexico. It also gives you, for example, the difference between actually opening a public investigation with the police and filing a report, because Mexico has a particular thing that it's a national commission for the location of disappearing victims, the Comisión Nacional de Búsqueda, and they are actually able to help and assist you without giving a formal notification to the authorities. The bot also gives you information according to your case. So it asks whether the person is a minor, whether it is an immigrant or foreigner in Mexico, whether it is a woman, because since this is such a systematic problem in Mexico and such a massive problem in Mexico, we actually have different protocols to search for different types of persons according to their characteristics. We also provide you information around what types of questions are gonna make when you go to the authorities and file a report or file an investigation, and your rights, right? One thing that happens a lot in Mexico is that even if you go to the police or to a public ministry, they will stall you. So they will make it hard for you to access justice. And you need to be very clear about what their obligations are and what your rights are, so that you can demand
what your rights are.
Your rights. And yeah, since it's a federal system, it's very hard to understand which authority has certain legal attributes according to what they do. So we tell you which one is responsible for each part of the process.
You know, what's interesting, it also provides you, it basically tells you, make sure you take these documents, because if you don't have these documents with you, you can't report it. I mean, they try to help you jump the bureaucratic loops in trying to report somebody at a moment where you're in a crisis, and it's hard to think. So it just kind of walks you through this this entire and horrific process. Let me ask you this: you must have interviewed a lot of experts and people who have suffered disappearances and who are going through this experience. How many people have actually used this bot up until now?
Around 600 people in 4 weeks, more or less.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot for this particular case. So that actually makes the case that it's something so systemic that we actually need an automated tool to kind of give information, right? Which is horrific in its own way. But another important thing to mention, now that you said that we interviewed a lot of people, is that this chatbot not only follows like the legal documentation, the protocols that the government has put in place, but also it contains practical tips given by the families, right? It has information such as, please write down the name of the people who give you attention. Please take a piece of paper and a pen. Please be very conscious that when you receive a copy of your report, it has to have certain characteristics, because if not, it's the same authority trying to misrepresent the case and file it as a report instead of a crime, for example. So like very practical, specific things that families have had to learn along the way. And after weeks and weeks and weeks of dealing with the Mexican authorities.
Alma, let me ask you this, and I know this is a tough question, but I mean, you and your group have been working with this tool, I guess, for 2 years now. I think that's what you told me. And what I just can't understand is how come so many people have disappeared during the COVID crisis, because technically, you know, there was less people in the streets. I mean, there should have been less homicides, less people running around, less, you know, crimes, and less people disappearing. What is your sense, based on all these interviews that you did and your experience talking to families and loved ones of the people who disappeared? What's happening in Mexico? Why do you think so many people are disappearing?
I think disappearances in Mexico are a very complex problem. Part of the complexity is that different groups of people disappear for different reasons. For example, women don't disappear for the same reason men disappear. Women of different ages don't disappear for the same reason. Men of different ages don't disappear for the same reason. And there's also a very particular geographical context. So we can easily see in the data that the disappearance problem changes geographically. At some point in time, it was very bad in Veracruz. Right now, it's very bad in Jalisco, and it responds to a lot to also the different and complex flows of the organized crime in Mexico. That's one thing. The second thing we have to remember is that something we repeat a lot is that anyone can disappear in Mexico, but certain groups are more at risk, and that's something we have to recognize. So even when we talk about the pandemic, the people who were able to stay at home for example, were middle upper class people who are at a lower risk. And then people who had to go out to work every day, and who had to still go out in the streets because they weren't able to stay at home for 3 months without working. Like, they're still in the public space and they're still at risk. So I think even though COVID was a very particular thing, for example, another project we worked on was the actual safety of women in public space in Mexico. The amount of time that the dynamic in the public space changed in Mexico for COVID was really small because we needed to go out again and work, right?
You had to go back to work.
Yeah. So the past 2 years, despite COVID, have followed the trend of the past 6, 10, 12 years, where violence keeps escalating. And that involves also the context of impunity and the lack of access to a justice system in Mexico. Right.
That's incredible. Well, first of all, the most important thing, please give us the phone number. So people can have access to this bot via WhatsApp, which is, for many foreigners who come to Mexico, I don't know if they understand, WhatsApp is the way people communicate in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's one of the most important communication platforms in this country, which doesn't necessarily reflect the same communication platforms in other countries. But WhatsApp you need to be in WhatsApp in order to be in contact with Mexican, if you live in Mexico, literally, for work reasons, for tourism, for business. So what is the phone number, Alma, please?
So yeah, first, the phone number is +52, which is a Mexican code, and then 55 92 25 21 74. And so +52 55 92 25 21 74. And yeah, one of the reasons we actually chose WhatsApp is because a lot of people have WhatsApp in their phones, because most companies in Mexico actually add it to your data plan. So it's free. And it was one way to actually improve access. We know that not everyone has WhatsApp, but we wanted to make the tool as available as possible. And this was a channel to do it.
So here it is, 52 55 92 25 21 74. So basically,
Yes.
you just added as an address to your WhatsApp under Socorro.
Yes.
Socorro bot. And if something happens, God forbid, but if you do have an emergency and you can't find a loved one, it immediately provides you information, or at least the steps you need to take. Alma Rangel, I really appreciate you joining us. She's the executive director of Codeando Mexico, and hopefully I would like to check up with you in the next couple of months to see what is happening, how the use of this technology has been helpful, and what you are seeing in terms of the number or the phenomena of disappearances in Mexico. Thank you so much, Alma.
Thank you, Ana Maria, for everything and for this space.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and you're listening to Living in Mexico. I'll be right back. Don't go away.